He loves Bret The Hitman Hart. He's a Bret Hart fan. Tell him, let him know.
Yeah, like since I was a child, I always like after Bret Hart and Owen Hart, and a big fan of WWF at that time and WWE. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so proud to see him live for the first time in my life.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you, of course. So that fans all the way from Saudi Arabia, all over the world, just see Bret The Hitman Hart. Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost showtime. Going live, Bret The Hitman Hart in Montreal on the anniversary of the Screwjob.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best that there ever will be. Not bad impression, good. Goldberg sucks! 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 Goldberg sucks!
Johnny, Bro!
Guys, thank you so much. I had to say bonjour, comment ça va? Yeah! That's all I know. So who's ready for Bret The Hitman Hart? All right, guys, we're gonna start in about, say, 10 to 15 seconds or so. He's just getting mic'd on, so he's not gonna come on until you guys make more noise. Come on, make more noise, come on. Now, all the way from Calgary, the one and only Bret The Hitman Hart! All right. Welcome, sir. How are you? Again, there's your mic right there. Come on, give it up, come on.
Bonjour.
Here we are again. From Toronto to Montreal. Like we're a rock band or something.
This is a better place.
Yeah. I love it. Now, we're going to start off by saying this. Now, you made history being the first ever WWF superstar to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame on 3 separate occasions, which is fantastic. Come on, guys, give it up for that. Now, on your recent was for the match with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Let's talk about the chemistry you got with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You know, we just always had a good chemistry. We always, you know, the real truth is, I think I had a lot to do with Steve going to WWF in the first place, because I remember when I think I was champion then. Even if I wasn't, I was always talking to Vince about getting guys to come in, and I had just heard from somebody that Steve Austin had been let go, or had just re-signed, I think, with ECW. And I told Vince, I said, why would you let ECW sign Steve Austin? And you're looking for guys to bring in, which at that time there wasn't many guys. Everyone was signed by WCW, so there wasn't very many new, fresh faces. If you remember Doink and all those kind of guys, it was always a rehash of a bunch of other guys. They're all guys that were WWE guys that they weren't fresh faces. Let me put it that way. And so with Steve, I said that to Vince. I said, you know, you got all these guys like Jim Ross looking for talent, and Steve Austin just signed with ECW. It's like, what are you guys doing? And I just mentioned it to him in passing. And less than 3, 4, 5 days later, Steve Austin was sitting in the dressing room in WWE, and they got him out of his deal and signed him. So I had a lot to do with Steve coming to WWF in the first place. And so when he did arrive, I was like, there you are. Like, it's like I was one that was trying to get you in here. And we always had a good chemistry. And then, of course, we started wrestling here and there. And Steve was a really good wrestler. He was one of those kind of guys that connected with just the style and everything that we had. And he was a guy that wanted to work hard. He wanted to have a good match. He wanted to make it. And he wanted to make a difference. And so I think the fact that we just had a really good chemistry in the beginning led to everything else. And the Iron Man, or not the Iron Man match, but the WrestleMania 13 match was, we fought at Survivor Series, which was a really good match too. I remember kind of Survivor Series, it was kind of like I did everything I could think of in that match it was a good, it was like, when I put the match together to work with him at Survivor Series, I thought I came up with everything that I could think of to do that would be different. And when they put us together at WrestleMania, I was like, we just wrestled and I just did everything. And I don't know what, and then it was like, well, it's an I quit match or whatever. And I'm like, those are the worst matches. It's like you take all the pinfalls out and then it's just submissions. Like, how many submissions are there? There's a Boston Crab, figure four, sharpshooter. I don't know, it's like less than 10 anyway. And to me, I remember, I told Vince, I said, this is like sabotage. Like, you're putting me in a match with Steve Austin with, and so we felt a little handcuffed going into that match, at least I did. And it was funny because I just remember sitting with Steve Austin. He was sitting on the ring apron and I was sitting in the front row. And we were just kind of looking at each other and I said, what are we doing? And it's like, I don't know. And that's where it started. And I was like, I just started thinking about the match. Like I said, I really didn't have any, all we got told, I remember when we were sitting there at ringside, somebody came up and told us that, or Steve, I think, had already talked to Vince. I never even talked to Vince. I just showed up and was talking to Steve, and Steve said, Vince said, we're allowed to do we can fight outside the ring. Like, we can fight through the crowd, fight up in the rafters, and fight all the way up and down the stairs, and do whatever we want. That was like a consolation to the fact that it was just wrestling holds and submissions and stuff. And it was like, all right, well, we'll take it. And then from there, we kind of just started to piece the match together. Like I said, why don't we start with a stare down? We'll stare at each other, which has always made me laugh because Roddy Piper did this first stare down with me at WrestleMania 8. And I almost burst out laughing. And when he did it, if you ever watch it, I'm biting my cheeks as hard as I can, trying not to laugh. And he's like straight up, he's like nose to nose with me, trying to stare me down. And I'm like, I don't do stare downs very good. Like, I'm gonna burst out laughing or kiss you, one of the two. But anyway, so Steve and I just chopped out that match in a couple minutes. But I always related it to, as I did to Steve that day, I said, it's like a school fight. I said, I feel like, because I've seen school fights and been in school fights, and I said, this has that kind of vibe of a school fight. Like, you're the new kid that came to my school, and now you're starting to, everybody can see it coming. Like, you and me are gonna have this big fight after school, and this is it. And that's where we pieced the match together, like psychology-wise. I always loved the match for so many things, even the blood, just to be frank and honest, nobody would be probably talking about that match today if it wasn't blood in it. The blood was what made the difference. And I remember when I said to Steve, I said, what would really make this match, would tip it over make it an unbelievable match would be if there was a little blood in there. And I asked him if he'd ever done it before. And Steve told me, which I think is a different answer now, but he told me that day that he goes, I've never done it before, but I'll sure as hell try. And I stopped him right there and I said, Steve, you can't practice at WrestleMania. I'm telling you, don't even think that you can do it at WrestleMania. Don't let me do it. And funny enough, Steve was like, okay, I'll let you do it. It was not very, most guys are like, not a chance. I always learned in wrestling, when I first got in, one of the first things I was ever taught was, don't ever let anybody cut you. It's just one of those things that you just can't trust somebody to do that. If you're gonna do it yourself. At least then you're responsible for cutting your own head off. But anyway, so I said that to Steve, and Steve was sort of a little nervous, I think, but he was like, because at the time, you could get into a lot of trouble. Well, Steve and I could have got into a lot of trouble for having blood. And the blood was not allowed anymore. It was sort of banned, which was fine with everybody. But I just remember going, if there's a little blood in this match, it'll make the biggest difference in the world. Like actually, when I think about it now, there had to be blood in that match. It was just, it would have been really boring without it. And so that was the key part, I think, for me, was that once Steve and me, he let me do it, agreed to let me do it to him. And it's not like I've done this like a million times to people. I've never did it to anybody either, but I knew that I could do it without anyone seeing me, or at least not open. If you ever watch the match, there's a part, I think Steve's got me in a rear chin lock. And I told him, I remember because I used to carry the little razor blade. You cut a razor blade into pieces, and then you take a little piece of it and you tape it up, and so it's just a point on it. And I used that, and I stuck it in my mouth here. It was all taped up except for the point. It's not like it's gonna cut my mouth open really bad, but anyway, it never moves. Like when you have that white sports tape around a razor blade, it's the feeling of it, like the texture is like you can actually grip it because of the tape on the razor blade. So I carried it in my mouth right above my lip here, and all the way through the match, I'm talking to Steve, and I'm going, like, I don't want to swallow a razor blade. And it's like, you have to be really careful. And so anyway, I carried it in my mouth for the whole match, including doing an interview, where they interviewed me before I walked out, and I remember going like, I hope they don't see it sitting right here. But anyway, I know that Steve had me in a rear chin lock in the middle of the ring, and I told myself, I'll ask him. When I finally asked, I said, are you ready? Are we doing it or not? And he goes, all right, let's do it. And I'm like, okay. Finally, he gives me, because I told him, I said, if you want to back out, if you get cold feet and you decide halfway through the match, just tell me. Say, I don't want to do it, and we won't do it. We'll go do everything else but the blood. And I gave him, because it was the kind of thing for Steve at that time, he was on the rise to become the big star in the company and all that, and he could tell. But at the same time, he didn't want to screw up anywhere, and where they end up being mad at him for something, or So it was a touch and go kind of thing. But when he had me in that chin lock, I remember I said, "Are you ready or not?" And it's like he goes, "Yeah, let's do it." And so if you ever watch, I think I gave him an elbow or something. I hit the ropes, and I can't remember. I know I sidestepped him and I threw him out of the ring. The other way around. He sidestepped me and threw me out of the ring. And when I landed on the floor, I spit the little blade out, and I got it in my hand. And Steve jumps out on the floor, and he goes to pick me up, and I said, he's going to run me into the fence or the railing, and I'm going to reverse him. And as he's picking me up, he goes, "Maybe we better not." And I remember, if you ever watch it, it's kind of funny. It makes me laugh when I watch it back. It's like he's throwing me into the railing, and I'm reversing, and I'm like yelling in his ear, "It's too late." And I remember he threw him into the railing, and I grabbed him in a rear chin lock in front of the entire, like we are here. Everybody in the building could watch. It was openly done right in front of everybody. But nobody saw it. And I did it in about 2 seconds. And that was the key to everything. That was beautiful, beautiful match. That's why I think I don't have any problem saying that was the greatest match of all time, although that's impossible to anyone to say, but it was just such a beautiful story. There's some things I loved in that match, like I know Ric Flair likes to do that ball shot where he hits the guys between the legs and all that, and it's like, just so you know, I'm sure most people know that you're never going to win a fight doing that. Like, it's just such a lame move. Like, I've never ever understood why this, on your knees and doing this is supposed to hurt. It's like stupid move. But for some reason, wrestling fans buy it all most of the time. And Ric Flair, one of those guys that loves that kind of ball shot. But I remember telling Steve in the dressing room, I said, the way we should do a ball shot from Calgary, Stampede Wrestling, we spread your legs apart and kick you, but we don't kick you in the jennies. We kick you in the, I remember telling Steve, I said, if you're standing really close to me and you go to kick me, if I sort of lean in a certain way, and we kind of practiced it, I think once. And I remember Steve was like, are you serious? Like, you want me to kick? And I'm like, don't kick me in the nuts. I mean, just kick me, and with your foot, when it comes around, it kicks me in the butt. Like, you kick it kind of like, it's hard to explain, but if you're standing really close to somebody, let me put it this way. I was at a rock concert one time, Rod Stewart concert in Calgary. And I was up right close to the stage, and there was some girl, was about 6'5", standing right in front of me, and she had a little girlfriend with her that was just bopping around, kept elbowing me and bumping into me and bashing into me. And I'm like just trying to watch the concert. I was about 18. Anyway, she finally got so mad, she turned around and pulled my glasses. I scratched my face, and because I kept pushing her ahead, and she turned around and clawed my face and knocked my glasses off my face. And I remember it's like, this lady's driving me nuts. I don't know what to do with her because I can't see the concert. She's like banging around and banging me and stuff. And finally she turned around and, if she we were so close together that if she just kneed me, she could have kneed me in the groin. She instead tried to kick me in the groin. And that's where I got this move from, is that I swear to God, she was so close to me that she kicked me right in the ass. And I was like, and then I was mortified that, like what could have happened, because it was, she was out to, really bring me down. But anyway, I won't go into all the rest that happened. But she had a shiner at the end of the night. I couldn't do anything else, but I finally just had to knock her out and watch the show. And not that this is nothing to do with wrestling, but I remember Rod Stewart saw the whole thing, and he was like mortified. Like, I remember looking at me like through the concert, like that guy just knocked that girl out. But anyway, so that's where that move came from. And when I did it with Steve Austin, we practiced it in the dressing room, that's one of the things, whenever I watch that match back, I always love it. I love that spot. It's like, watch this. This is a real nut shot. Like, this is a really good one. Like, this looks real. Like, when I watched that match at WrestleMania 13, I think you could put that match just about, well, you could put it right with any kind of UFC match. It looks like it's such a good brawl and a fight, like where you really can connect with the violence of it. And that's what I love about that match with Steve, is that no animals were harmed in the making of that movie. It was such an easy, if you look at the cut on Steve's head, it's about the size of a dime. When Steve said, I remember telling Steve, you can trust me. And that's a big word in wrestling, to trust somebody like that. And he did. He's like, okay. And that's why I loved working with Steve. That's why we always had the chemistry we did, and that's why it was such a magic moment.
Come on, give it up for that guy right there. I gotta say, family is so important to you. You always probably get asked about Owen and stuff, about your WrestleMania 10 match, the steel cage match, 94. But let's talk about, I wanna ask you one thing that's quite different. What's the one thing that you learned from being in the ring with Owen?
I don't know. I don't know if I learned a lot working with Owen.
Like, next question.
I will say that Owen and I, we always got along as brothers and as I was lucky I was a little older than Owen. I think there's 6 years between us. And the fact that I was a little older than him just took out any issue for him and me to ever have any. We never ever squabbled or fought over stuff. Or it's like the brother next down between us, him and I brawled all the time. But Owen and me always got on really well as brothers. And when he got into the wrestling, I remember telling him when he started, because he just got into wrestling when I started in WWF in '84, and by '85 I'm like, Owen, I'm gonna hold the door for you. Like, I got no clout there. I'm nobody. I'm just a tag team guy with Jim Neidhart, but I'm gonna try my best to just keep, because Owen was really good right off the bat. I knew Owen was gonna be a great wrestler, and he was already starting to turn heads in Calgary and Japan and stuff like that. And it's like, just wait, keep working, keep doing what you're doing, and I don't know how or what I'm gonna do or what I'm gonna say to get you there, but I'm gonna get you to WWF as fast as I can. And just keep planning. It's gonna happen, and I'm gonna make it happen, and just hang on. And within a year, I had Owen booked. And what happened was, I was in a match, me and Jim in Denver with, I don't even remember, somebody, ST Jones or somebody, tagged up with somebody against me and Jim, and they were short a guy. So they asked me, they said, is there anybody that your dad could fly down from Calgary just to work Denver for one shot, just to be in a tag match? We're short a guy. And I said, sure, why don't we bring Owen? So I booked Owen. They didn't know who I booked. I just booked Owen in the tag match. And Owen and I wrestled for the very first time that night. And it was really strange wrestling your brother, because I'd never done that before. Actually, I know I had done that before. And I got my eye busted open, and that was my brother Keith, who was notoriously the stiffest of the Hart brothers. But Owen and I wrestled, and we had a really good match, and then everyone started talking, like, he got noticed, and then a few weeks later they ended up bringing him in for a tryout. But Owen and me, we always had if you watch Owen, he doesn't wrestle like me. He wrestles like Owen. Like, he's got his own style with the high flying. And I remember, it's like, when I talked to Owen back then, I'm like, what I love about you is that you don't copy me. You're not copying me. You're completely different than me. Like, and trust me, I'm never gonna be doing the high flying flips and twirls that you're doing, and somersaults and all that. I can't do that stuff. And so I always feel we never had any competition, like where we were competing with each other in a competitive way. We were always, and then when we finally worked, it was like, I remember, because I never wrestled a lot of Mexican wrestlers or high flyers or guys that mostly did a lot of spots and stuff like that. It was kind of like, I'd wrestled Tiger Mask in Japan and stuff like that, but I knew I could have a great match with Owen, and we did, and that was the whole thing, is getting Owen noticed, and I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Absolutely,
I doubt it.
How's the coffee?
It's warm.
Now, I'm going to send the track as well. You mentioned your dad. What is the one thing that you learned from your dad that you took on throughout your whole career that just stuck with you?
I think what I learned from my dad was a calmness, like in a crisis, when everything's going wrong. You gotta have somebody that's calm and sensible. But maybe I think I got that from my dad. Maybe just my dad was always very, he always had a lot of little sayings that he would say, like, you get a lot further on grease than gravel and stuff like that. But the little things that he said, when he said them to you, sometimes, you could just sort of see the logic. And he was a very logical guy and very sensible guy, my dad. And I'm not sure what traits I got from my dad. I have a lot of, I think, I always felt I had a really good 50-50 split with my mom and dad, where I was a little bit of my mom and a little bit of my dad. My dad was a little more, I think he was, let me put it this way, when I was 20 years old, and I could have fought my dad when he was 20 years old, I would have got annihilated. My dad was really a tough guy, but a very subtle guy. He wasn't a guy that acted like a tough guy. But I think if you looked at him, you knew that you don't want to mess around with him. He was built like a tank. But he was legitimately, Canadian amateur heavyweight champion. Should have gone to the Olympics except for World War II happened. And he was a really tough guy and built like a tank. I mean, my dad had legs like oak trees, and he just was a really tough guy. And I don't know if you look back in the wrestling, all the tough guys that were in it for so many years, going through the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. My dad was, a legend to all those kind of guys, and I never ever. My dad was a famous shooter, tough guy, wrestler, maybe in the top 5. I don't know, maybe even the number 1. I remember my dad saying he didn't think anybody could ever take him, kind of thing, and I'm like, I don't doubt him. But I also know that I'm not like my dad. I was a worker. I didn't want to fight for real. I would never have done UFC. If the opportunity presented itself, it's like, I got better things to do than get my brains pounded out by some guy for, I just never ever understood. I'm not a guy that I would never have made a living getting beat up, although wrestling's pretty close. But I love I think the theater aspect of wrestling. I always thought my dad was a guy that was one of the toughest shooters, and I always thought with myself, I was like, I don't want to hurt anybody. And what I kind of liked about wrestling was that you don't really have to hurt anyone. That's the whole thing, is you talk out this match and then you go out and perform it. And, I love the fact that you come back to the dressing room and you go, every match I ever had, I came back to the dressing room and shook my opponent's hand and thanked him for the match and got dressed. It was always an objective to go out there and not get hurt, or not hurt anyone, or to have him come back and go, yeah, it was great, it was easy. And then and especially when you know that you can satisfy the fans out there and have a great match and not get hurt and not hurt anyone. Sometimes the easiest matches are the most fun. And like Steve Austin, that's what I love about the match at WrestleMania 13. It was just such an easy match. It was like, when I came back, I was like, I barely had a sweat going and kind of was barely breathing hard. And I was like, that's how wrestling should be every night. It should be just, it was like a beautiful movie, to play a part in.
I come out there. I gotta ask Bret, which opponent of yours, because you had so many, we could go down your whole catalog, which you don't have all day here, obviously, you gotta catch a flight, but I gotta say now, which opponent brought out the best out of you and why?
I would say Roddy Piper, maybe. I watch a lot of my matches back, and, I take credit for all my matches. Like almost every, like Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13, that's 95% Bret Hart, 5% Steve Austin. Iron Man match, Shawn Michaels, that's 90% Bret Hart, 10% Shawn Michaels. It's mostly me sitting down with Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin, both me sitting down and saying, this is what we're gonna do. And then mostly nodding at me going, okay, all right, then what am I doing? And I just lay out the whole match to these guys most of the time. But with Roddy Piper, I remember I found out I was wrestling Roddy. I was kind of like, well, me and Roddy are friends, right? I wasn't really sure because he was off. Couldn't connect with him. I'd see him at TV tapings. He was only kind of coming down for the TV shows, and he wasn't on the road or anything. So I saw him, and it was all very sudden. Like I lost the belt to the Mountie and did that whole angle. And then when Roddy got it, I was kind of like, almost kind of felt like I got swerved. Like, oh, this was all set. They promised me the belt, and now they put it on Roddy. And I'm like, But and Roddy told me that he's dropping the belt back to me. But and I know if Roddy was just playing with me in those days because we were pretty good buddies, and but he kept joking that that we might have to shoot for it out there, and I'm always like, I know you're joking, but I don't know if you're joking. Like you're the one saying it, And it was kind of like a bit of a joke, but I was like, he said stuff to me sometimes, like, or he'd cut a promo on me, and he would look at me like he was ribbing me that he was getting really serious about this match, and I started to get kind of like, maybe he is getting kind of, I don't know, like maybe it's gonna be more of a struggle than I thought. But anyway, my point is that you kind of plan like, okay, I don't know what we're gonna do, but we'll figure it out. And then I kind of mapped out what I thought how the match should go in my head. And at that time, I was super respectful of Roddy. Like Roddy was one of the biggest legends in the business at the time, and it was like, I just hope I can have a good match with him, and we really hit it out of the park and all that. But I didn't really know. Roddy kept kind of playing with my head a little bit, where he's like, we might have to shoot out there, and he better get ready because I'm coming, or it was always kind of like, I always was smiling, kind of like, are you ribbing me, or are we gonna? Because me and Roddy, there was a couple of times, more than once, at least a couple of times with Roddy where we would be in a hotel room after drinking beer, and all of a sudden he would just tackle me in the room. And he would start wrestling me, like amateur wrestling or whatever. We would wrestle for about 45 minutes, tipping over the beds, knocking things over, until I remember one time it got so heavy in the fighting and rolling around and knocking couches over and stuff that the security came in, and we were still wrestling on the rug, and somebody from the hotel, the bellman was there, and I remember he finally agreed that Roddy agreed for me that we would stop wrestling and fighting if he would go down and get us each one more beer. So he went down and brought us back one more beer each. And I remember when he brought the beer back, we were still wrestling on the floor when he came back in. And when he stopped and brought the beer, I couldn't believe that he actually brought beer to like, please stop fighting. And as soon as he brought the beer, I shot through the door. And then I had to go through the whole thing again with my first wife, because she was waiting for me. This is what, I think I left to go get something from Roddy, and 4 hours later I came back with mat burns all over my forehead and elbows, and she wouldn't talk to me, and she was so mad. And I remember first thing in the morning, Roddy, he was like, I'm so sorry about last night, and he was holding her hand and patting her hand and telling her that it was all his fault. And I never heard another thing about it. It was like, she was always forgiven because it was Roddy. But anyway, Roddy, that was the match where I put a lot of thought into it, and I thought, this is how the match should go. And then it's like, well, what's going to happen when I sit down with Roddy? And he goes, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, I want to do this. And I thought, I've got the perfect match in my head. And I just was like, and of course I would have to do what Roddy was more my senior at that time. So I remember we were in Halifax, and we actually, first time we saw each other was about 2 weeks before WrestleMania. And we were always buddy-buddy, but we sat down in this restaurant, and I remember he goes, so what do you want to do? And I said, well, I got some ideas and stuff, and I remember I said, well, what do you want to do? And I remember in that moment, I was like, what if he tells me a lousy idea? Do I have the guts to say, Roddy, that idea sucks? And I remember I said, you tell me what you want to do. And he started telling me the match. And he laid out the whole match about, like, let me put it this way. Roddy had the exact same match that I did. Like, not necessarily the moves, but the story. We could put the moves in after. And I remember he laid out the whole match and how he thought it should go. The finish is, the ending of the Roddy Piper match is Roddy's ending. I remember he said he goes, he watched it done, he watched that finish at a match somewhere, and he goes, that's how I want to have my last match of my career or something. It was a really special ending that he had found or seen done or done somewhere, but that was how he wanted to go out. And he goes, I want you to do the, where I push off with the sleeper and fall back on him and all that and roll over and pin him. And 1, 2, 3. And I was like, great, I love it. This is the exact same match. That's the thing I was going to say is that Roddy laid out for me basically the same framework of the match that I had in my mind. And when Roddy started talking to me, he was like, oh, it's such a relief because it's like we're on the same page. Roddy knew how to make a hero, and I was trying to, in those days, trying to climb up to the next level. And Roddy was really the first guy to reach down and pull someone like me up to the next level and pass that torch. In contrast to guys like Jake Roberts and Hulk Hogan who never passed the torch to anybody. All they did is take and take and take and never ever help anybody. They're two of the biggest pieces of shit in wrestling.
I gotta ask this now. Is there an opponent that you haven't faced? Now, you keep saying before, like a current modern day wrestling, but actually somebody from your era that you never faced that you regret you never had a chance to?
Yeah, Kurt Angle would be one. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Kurt Angle would be one of the first ones that comes to mind. Lance Storm? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have wrestled Lance Storm. Jericho, I'd like to have wrestled. No, let's leave Dean Malenko at home.
Rey Mysterio is one of your favorites as well.
Rey Mysterio, there's one. I would love to wrestle Rey Mysterio. The truth is I was a guy I loved as a kid. My passion in wrestling started from, I loved masked wrestlers. They're my favorite. I loved anyone with a mask. And Mil Mascaras was one of my favorites as a kid. And unfortunately, he was a really horrible wrestler and a horrible human being. But, didn't stop me from liking masked wrestlers. And when I met Rey Mysterio, I still say this, Rey Mysterio is one of the greatest wrestlers, maybe the greatest wrestler of all time. Nobody can lace Rey Mysterio's shoes up. Right? He was such a great wrestler and a great athlete and he was just so good and such a smart wrestler and so amazing. I mean, I would love to have gone in in my mind, like when I would have to think I'd have to be a little younger than I am now. But, like when I was in my early 20s maybe late 20s, I would love to have wrestled Rey Mysterio, like when I was young and could do all that kind of stuff. I don't know if by the time I was in WCW, it might have been hard for me to do the kind of match I would love to do with Rey Mysterio. But I never wrestled the Lucha Libre style, other than with Owen and Tiger Mask insert. I did some. I could wrestle those guys a little bit, but I would love to have really gone overboard with Rey Mysterio and tried to really just have a match that I've never had before. Like that's with all kinds of fancy moves and stuff that guys like Rey and the Mexican wrestlers do. I would just love to have had one of those in my portfolio where it's like, oh, you haven't want to watch a high-flying match? Here, watch me and Rey Mysterio back in 1995. I would love to have had that. We never got to do it. I used to beg guys like Eric Bischoff, please put me with Rey Mysterio or somebody. Put me with anybody. And they would never put me with anybody that made any sense. But
that's what you call haters nowadays, I guess.
Go back to guys that I would like to have worked with. I would love to have wrestled Dwayne Johnson a lot more times. I wrestled him once. I would love to have, Yeah, John Cena would be up. Can you imagine John Cena with the U.S.-Canada thing that I had going?
Wow.
Boy, it would have been... Like, hypothetically, I'd just say the screw job never happened, and nothing, and I was still in WWF. That would have happened. I would have worked with John Cena, and we would have done amazing stuff. And I've always been really impressed by John Cena. I'll just say this, like when I was back there in 2010, when I wrestled Vince and all that stuff, I found John Cena he was very comparable or similar to me in the sense that he was a serious professional, that he was a detail guy that went over every little detail in the match. And I remember watching him go over the match with different wrestlers. And sort of just being around him, I remember kind of going, that's what I used to do. I was always that guy to go over it, okay, like, let's go over it one more time. And everyone's like, no, we got it. And I'm like, let's go over it one more time. And then we go over it one more time, and you'd find out that somebody didn't know what they were doing. And then it's like, that's why you got to go over it one more time all the time. And being a detail guy. And John was always, I found John Cena to be just such a professional. That I would love to have worked with him.
MJF.
Who? MJF, who is that?
No, that's the best. That is the best response you can give right there.
Just curious though, who is it?
It's an AEW wrestler.
AEW wrestler.
Maxwell what is his name?
As you can tell, I don't watch a lot anymore.
I'm a dirty dog.
AJ Styles would be another guy I would love to have worked with.
Brian Danielson.
We could go on all night.
It's like 7 o'clock. We're still going.
There's a lot of guys I wished I could have worked with, but yeah, I would like to wrestle Brock Lesnar. I've always understood that Brock Lesnar, like I heard that he wished that he had wrestled me one time. And I've always heard from different guys that Brock Lesnar's like a professional, like he's really good. He's not like Goldberg. I'm just saying, he knows what the wrestling is all about, and he does it right. And some guys like Goldberg never understood it ever.
I love it. Now we know that you just mentioned John Cena, his retirement tour and stuff. Now there's a lot of debate. Do you believe that he's a modern day GOAT?
I would think so. I mean, he's been around long enough to be a GOAT. And he's been around a long time, and he's been a great wrestler for a long time. So I think he's up there, for sure.
Now CM Punk recently called you the Wayne Gretzky of wrestling. Now, you know he pays a lot of homage to you. He always praises you. He even wears the pink and the black, all that, etc. What is your take on that when you hear somebody from CM Punk call you the Wayne Gretzky of wrestling?
Well, he's got a good eye, I guess. I don't know. I honestly don't know that you could ever say anybody's the greatest wrestler or the greatest rock band, or it's all interpretation. So it's like, but I think, I love the way, like I'll be honest, I have a hard time watching today's wrestling. I just can't really watch it. It's too fake for me. Yeah, but I love watching the old 90s wrestling. I really do. Like when I watch my matches back, or just in almost any match, even obscure Stampede wrestling matches, there's something about the realism, the punches and the kicks, and even just the way the presentation is. It just seems to me to be more onus put on the workmanship of learning the craft of being wrestlers. I think that today's wrestlers are actors. Most of them are actors pretending to be wrestlers. And, they don't actually know how to wrestle, and they don't even know what a headlock is. Like everything is a high spot. everything is high spots. Like, I want to get my move in. It's like, I don't know, I always thought wrestling needed to actually pretend to be wrestling. And I miss the wrestling aspect and the psychology of the 60s and 70s wrestling, like the presentation of trying to, pretending that it's a real sport and a real, if you watch Ricky Steamboat, that's what I like about Ricky Steamboat as an example. He was always a guy that he walked always in his eyes and his expression and the way he wrestled. It was like a contest, and he made wrestling to seem real. And there's so many different wrestlers that always made it seem real, but I always tried to be real. Like, I always tried to keep it real and like take somebody down. I can remember sometimes taking somebody over in a headlock, and in amateur wrestling, when you take someone over in a headlock, you often grab the arm and you take them over with the arm and the head. And I can remember sometimes in pro wrestling taking over some guy that's about 300 pounds, like whipping him over and throwing him on his back from a headlock. And I took him over by the arm, and everyone's like, "You're shooting with me out there." And it's like, no, I wasn't shooting on it. It's just a wrestling move, like a real move, But it's like, some people, they don't understand wrestling today is, I see guys throwing punches and they open their hand at the last second and slap the guy and then close it by the time they pull back. Who's that Irish guy, Seamus? Does those all the time. And whenever I see him, I'm like, why don't you take 10 minutes and go down and have someone teach you how to throw a punch instead of throwing that embarrassment of a punch. When you watch WrestleMania 7 with the Nasty Boys, when the Hart Foundation and the Nasty Boys wrestled, and I'm on the second rope, and I think I got sags or knobs, I can't remember which one. You want to watch punches. Watch the punches that I pound on Sags' head. I remember hitting him over and over on the head. And whenever I watch it back, I go, look at those punches. I always like, look at these punches, look at these punches. And I can tell you, not one of those punches hurt anyone. But if you watch it, it looks like I'm just killing them out there. And I go, that's what I do. That's what I did. I made it real without hurting anybody. I think when you watch my matches back, you might go, oh, I bet Bret Hart was no fun to wrestle. A lot of hard falls and stuff happening to you. But the truth is, I always looked like I was hurting my opponent, and that I'd be very physical. Like, I can remember Sid, Psycho Sid. He actually got pretty nervous wrestling me the very first time he wrestled me somewhere, because he'd been watching me, and he thought I was like a real brawler out there that would just, fight for real and stuff. And then I remember hitting him on the back, like really beating on him. And he didn't even know how to sell it. He was because nothing hurt. Like, I remember hitting him across the back and just laying my forearms and just whacking him as hard as I could. And then he realized after about 20 seconds that none of it hurt. He was like, oh, he's really hurting me. Like, I'm gonna have to kill this Bret Hart. He's going out of his mind. And then it's like, next thing, it was more like, I can't believe none of those hurt. Like, and then he realized, come back after the match. It was like, and then every match I ever had with him was easier after that. But it's because he realized that and I was pretty stiff. I was a very solid wrestler. It was, when you wrestle me, you didn't have a night off. Like, when I body slam you, you're gonna get body slammed. But the punches, my punches they were notoriously referred to as rubber hammers. And Undertaker used to call them rubber hammers all the time. And because it was the same thing. They always thought, it looks like he's beating these guys, punching them like bone to bone. And if your fist is punching some guy in the head, it'll hurt. Hurt you and the guy that you're hitting. Most people that have ever had a fight know that, if you punch in bones, it hurts. And but if you watch my punches, most of the time, depending on the camera angles, they look real, and they never were. And I don't know, I want to explain it, but I always had big hands. My hands were much bigger before when I was wrestling, and big meaty paws. And so when I clenched my fist, this part down here on the lower half of my hand was kind of like just a big thick piece of meat. So I could just punch guys, and I would turn my hand at the last second and hit them with the. So, and I would always aim for their head and hit their head with my fist, but it was always the rubber hammer, and they hurt like a little bit. I remember coming back to the dressing room, like, you hit me with those punches, like I could feel them, and it's like, and I'm like, yeah, but there's no marks. There's nothing, there's no damage. There's nothing, like they might have hurt in the ring a little bit. More like a surprise, like, did you really hit me in the head like that? Because in wrestling, that's not cool to hit somebody. But I think people learned after a while, like with me, that everything I did was believable. And I was the most focused on believability, I think, maybe. And maybe, I don't know if any wrestlers I could say that were better than me at making it appear to be more real. Like even my turnbuckles, and I always wanted to convince the audience that maybe this match was real, or maybe my match was real. And I think I achieved that.
Now, Brett, I gotta say, it's a little humor. I've been dying to do this the whole time because it's getting hot in here. I gotta say this, I'm not stripping. Now, I gotta say, we see you in Maple Leaf jersey all the time. We've seen you in a Flames jersey. Why not never Montreal Canadian jersey, right, you guys? Montreal Canadian? I was dying to think I'd die on the hot here. Are you a fan of the Habs?
No, I'm not. I was at certain times, but I loved the Habs. I love hockey, but I found that they just won all the time. And they would win every year. Like my whole childhood was Montreal won everything all the time. And it was like,
Not a problem anymore.
Yeah, not a problem lately anyway, but that'll change. I'm more of a fan now. I'm a fan of all the Canadian teams. I want to see the Cup come back to Canada.
I gotta ask you this now. Who's winning the Stanley Cup this year?
Canadian.
Montreal.
Hey!
I know it's not Calgary, so.
Now, I gotta ask you now, I would obviously give it up for the Toronto Blue Jays, right, guys? Blue Jays, Canada's team, right? How about that run with the Blue Jays? 2 outs away, heartbreak, but...
It's like the Iron Man match. It's like just a big heartbreak at the end, but still a great match. I don't think when you have I think I said this before the game, is it really doesn't matter who wins in a seventh game. Like it's, as long as it's close, and it was close, went right to the 11th inning or whatever.
Exact extra innings, heartbreak.
It's like, you can't ask for a better story. Like that is the Iron Man match. It's the same thing. It was just a beautiful series. I think everyone, when I got to Game 7, is like, I don't care who wins. I just want a good game. And I got that. I'm really happy that it was just such a good, close series. And I don't think, if you'd asked me last fall when the season was starting or whatever, I wouldn't have thought Toronto was going to go into the World Series, period. So it was a kind of a treat, just a surprise. Exactly. But I think they're going to be back next year, and we'll see what they do.
That's it. All right, now, Brent, it's not done yet. This is like, let's say, the final chapter. Now, we all know what we're here for today. It's the anniversary of the Screwjob.
Please.
Yes, right? I gotta say now, 28 years later, how do you personally reflect on that Screwjob to date?
I really look at it and I go, I'm really proud of myself. I think when I look back on it more and more, and as I'm really proud of every single thing I did. Really for probably a year, they were just fucking with me, like just tearing me down and trying to, when I think about that time, it's like, Vince was such a slime ball, such a crook, he really was. He was tell you one thing and do another and tell you another thing. And, I just, I kept my integrity. I was honest in every conversation I ever had with Vince. I always spoke the truth to him, told him what I didn't like or what was going on or this happened I think it's fair to say now, and I don't want to get into a big, like pulling a big scab off, but of course we're here to talk about the screw job, so I really think, and I'm trying not to be so much controversial, but I think I didn't realize, or actually I did realize a long time ago. I thought about it back in 1997 when it was all happening. I remember going, when Sean, if you remember, forfeited the belt on Monday Night Raw and retired to go find his smile somewhere. And really, like that, when all that happened, I remember in the dressing room when Vince told everybody that Sean was going to forfeit the belt because he had what was his knee or something? I can't remember I think it was his knee. And then Sean, I remember when Sean, he was crying in the ring. Sean was crying in the ring, and the tears were in his eyes and all that. And I just remember Vince, I was watching on the monitor in the back area with Vince. And me and Undertaker looked at each other, and he rolled his eyes that this whole thing was a bunch of bullshit and that there was nothing wrong with Sean, especially when you saw Sean. Sean, if you remember, he went to the corner and did a standing backflip after he forfeited the belt because of his knee injury. And I'm watching this, and he does a standing backflip somersault off the top and lands right in the middle of the ring. And I'm going, you can't do that with a bad knee. This is all bullshit. And I remember Undertaker looked at me and he pulled his eyelid down like this, like it was like. And the thing is that Sean came back, and I remember Vince crying. Like when Sean was in the ring talking about, he lost some part of himself, or he was gonna go find his smile. I remember Vince had the tear roll down his cheek, and I remember watching it and going, I think there's more going on here between these two guys. Honestly, and I'm not trying to be, I'm just being honest and blunt, but I don't know, I suspected, and now I really have serious, I think that Sean and Vince were sleeping with each other. Honestly, I'm just telling you, I think I'm very close to the truth here. Sean and Vince were lovers, and that's why I'm being dead honest, and I'm telling you.
We all know what the H stands for.
When I look back, it's like, I got caught between two lovers. And I got shafted and screwed over, and Sean was so envious and jealous of my position that he finally had to sleep with Vince to get it. And I tell you, I say all this with absolute, I would say it to Sean if he was right here. I would actually like to have Sean come clean and say, look, we were lovers. Because I'm sure they were. I have an absolute 100%. If I saw either Vince or Sean here, I would say I think you guys were lovers.
I love it. Now, do you think it changed the wrestling business after you left for better or worse?
Well, clearly it's not better. No, I don't know. I can't answer that. It's hard for me because wrestling's like booming right now, so popular. It's probably as popular maybe as it's ever been. And I'm like, I have a hard time watching it. Like, I miss the realism. Like I don't know, maybe that's why UFC is becoming more popular. I don't know. It's like I liked my wrestling, because I think all wrestling, you have to be a great wrestler, you have to be a great wrestling fan first. Which is why, baby, if I was any good as a wrestler, if you guys really appreciated my wrestling, it's because I grew up watching wrestling and watched so many different wrestlers from so many different parts of the world. French wrestlers, Canadian wrestlers, Japanese wrestlers, Mexican wrestlers. They all washed up in Calgary sooner or later, and there was all these different styles and English wrestling. And, I got a really good education on wrestling, and I think I really understood. Most of the time when I was talking with even like Steve Austin or somebody, it's like, I was always like, I would always put myself in the audience, if you can imagine this, but I would visualize the match from the front row and how a fan would perceive it or what a fan would think and I was always able to do that, to project what would capture a fan's interest and like what would be a great finish or what a great ending would be if you did this. And I was always really good at putting really good little ideas together and then tuck them in my back pocket and keep them for like years and years and years. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're going to Wembley to wrestle Davey Boy and it's like, I got an ending that nobody's ever seen that will blow the roof off them, even though they didn't have a roof. But I just, you just know. It's like, I know what the fans will love. And because I was a fan, like a real fan, like a real diehard fan that waited to, for every Friday for the show and sold all my programs so I could watch the first match and would watch. I loved wrestling and was a real fan. So I think that's why I was as good as I was, is because I really wanted to deliver the great matches that I got delivered to me.
I gotta ask you this now. What did you learn about, let's say, trust and business after that whole little shindig?
The whole little shindig being Vince?
Let's put that, yes.
Well, I learned that integrity is everything. And I think of right from day one, like even the day after I knocked Vince out, when I got home, I can remember looking myself in the mirror and kind of like, did I fuck up or did I just, what the fuck did I do to bring this all on? And it's like, I worked my ass off for this guy for 14, 15 years. Gave him everything from front turnbuckles to, every body slam, every turnbuckle. I gave him so much. I never missed a show. I wrestled, I think, 14 or 15 straight years for WWF, and I think I missed one show in 15 years. And it's like, I gave so much and worked so hard and tried so hard. And when I look at how, in the end, how Vince treated me and how the Screwjob, and I had overwhelming odds. The things that they were trying to do, like even the week of the Screwjob, they're all planning and plotting this out, how to fuck me over in the ring and fuck me over in Canada in front of all my home fans. And I'll be honest, Montreal was always really good to me as a city. First time I wrestled in Montreal, I had been in the WWF about a month. I can't remember. Eventually we came to Montreal, and I remember Bret Hart, Calgary, I remember walking out, and I got a pretty good response. I remember they actually welcomed me, and I remember then having a match. I remember who I wrestled, but I had an okay match, and I remember I got cheered, and I just remember the next time I came back, when I walked out, I got a good pop. I was like, geez, it's only my second time here, and I got a good pop. And I always thought, because I had a good match last time. And the people in Montreal were all real fans. Montreal had some of the greatest wrestling fans in the world, just like Madison Square Garden or Boston Garden. That's where wrestling was invented, and that's where all these cities were where wrestling was formed. And so that's where it all started. And they understood they understood wrestling, Montreal fans. And I I always felt Montreal was a place where, if you wrestle really hard, they appreciate it and let you know that they like your style. And so the next time I came back, and the next time, and the next time, and I always had a good following with the fans here. And same with Madison Square Garden would be the exact same thing. They always liked me in New York because I worked hard and gave them a good match. And so I think, what was the question?
No, keep going. But I was just saying about the trust in business, like if all that.
Well, going back to Vince and all that, I mean, I just, when I looked in the mirror that day after it happened, I was always like, why did this happen to me? Like I gave this guy everything I could give him. It's not like, it's not like I was looking forward to knocking Vince McMahon out, or looking forward to a confrontation with Sean. I didn't care. I did care. No, I shouldn't say I didn't care, but I'm an old school guy, and wrestling business is something that's in my blood, in my family, and I know how wrestling works. I grew up in a wrestling family, and like Vince McMahon's got no more say about wrestling than I do. Like my family's every bit as involved in it as his family was. And so I know there is honor in wrestling, and there's a trust between two wrestlers. When you agree to wrestle somebody and you go in the ring and you're basically giving him your body, and he's going to give you his. You have to have trust. Of all the things in wrestling, there's no more important thing than trust. You got to trust the guy. Like if somebody body slams you, climbs over to the top turnbuckle and starts to climb up, and he's standing on the top turnbuckle and you're lying in the middle of the ring with your like this. That's trust. You have to trust that he's going to jump all the way off that turnbuckle with a knee drop or an elbow drop or a headbutt or whatever he's going to do, and that he is not going to hurt you. And that takes a lot of, you have to lie there, and that's where the onus is on the guy that's climbing up. He's got somebody that's got 3 kids at home and a wife that are waiting for him to come home, and you can't jump off and break his neck or be careless or reckless. You can't jump off and do the Goldberg to him. You just can't. It's like, it's all about that trust. And when you jump off and deliver a perfect knee drop on some guy's chest, and then he rolls over and he's selling it like crazy, he's actually going, this guy's fucking great. This guy, I never heard it all. And that's what wrestling's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to hurt guys, and it's all about trust and respect. And, when I was champion, I didn't ask them to make me champion or pressure them to make me champion or anything like that. I ended up as champion from Undertaker, that SummerSlam. But I think they put the belt on me for the sole reason that Vince wanted to screw me over and push me out the back door like nothing, like just sort of kick me out, and not just let me go, but to tear me down so that I lost all my value before I left the company. And so I had in my contract, I had creative control for my last 60 days to prevent them from doing that. So, I had every right legally to protect myself from whatever they might do to me, storyline-wise. So when I found out that it was me and Sean wrestling at Survivor Series, Sean had been refereed the match at SummerSlam, and we were not quite talking to each other yet. Kind of like, I didn't know if there was still issues between us or not. You always hope that you can move forward and start over again. We're the first 2 guys in the wrestling business to have differences or disagreement. It's like, okay, so you always have to be, in my mind, it's like you always have to be professional. And when I found out that I was wrestling Sean, I didn't know the ending. I didn't know what they were doing. And my contract was up in limbo. I wasn't sure if I was staying or going, but I just know that Sean I went to Vince. No, I went to Sean. That's right. This is the crux of the whole screw job. Is that I went to Sean and said, "Hey, I heard we're wrestling at Survivor Series." I said, "I just want you to know that I've always been a professional, and that when you work with me, that you can trust me, and I don't have any problem dropping the belt to you or whatever the finish is or however they want to do is fine with me." I said, "I just wanted you to know that." And so then Sean looks at me. This was in Anaheim, California. He goes, "I appreciate that, but I just want you to know that I'm not willing to do the same thing for you." And to me, it's like, I don't know if you can absorb that the way that, that goes against everything that in the wrestling business. Like, nobody ever says that to anybody. And it's a total disrespect, especially after what I just said to him, after what a piece of shit he'd been for the last year. And I was like, I took the high road and told you I'd be happy to do whatever they want. I have no problem losing to you. And you have the nerve to tell me that you appreciate it, but you're not willing to do the same thing for me. Which takes, to me, that's unprofessional. And I'm like, that's not, that changes everything. If you're not willing to, if you don't have any respect for me, then how do you expect me to have trust and respect for you? So that is the problem. And I've never had anyone ever say that to me in the wrestling business. I don't remember that ever happening anywhere in the wrestling business, at least not very often, where someone refuses to lose. And so I did all the right things and took all the right measures. And I remember Vince, that maybe about 2 days later, pulled me into a dressing room with Sean. Or he actually pulled me in the dressing room and he goes, "We think we're gonna put you with Sean at Survivor Series." And I'm like, and he goes, "We're gonna have you drop the belt to Sean." And I'm like, "I can't do it. I can't do it." And he's like, "What happened, or why not?" And I'm like, and I told him exactly what he said. And I remember Vince went, like, he was like so mad. He goes, "I can't believe he said that to you." And I'm like, "Well, he did. And I'm not doing business with a guy like that. And you better find somebody else, because I'm not doing shit with Shawn Michaels. I never dropped the belt to Shawn Michaels. I never dropped the belt to anyone that has no respect for me, to do the right thing with me, especially after I offered to." And so that's where the whole problem was. And of course, Vince went and got Sean. I don't know how many people have read my book, but he went and got Sean, and Sean came in. I remember Sean crying his eyes out, which also brings me back to, I think that they were lovers. But they really, Sean was crying, and I remember he I say the stupidest things sometimes, and I can't believe I said that to you. And I'm like, it's like, I don't know, I remember I told Vince that day in the room, I said, like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is like, I've never had anyone ever disrespect me like that. But I'm not dropping the belt to anybody, period. And that's where that all started. I shouldn't say that. I did say I dropped the belt to anybody but Sean. And I stand by that. He was unprofessional. If I should have just beat the crap out of him. But.
Now, I gotta say, Bret, we all here thank you so much. You're not just gonna give your flowers. We want to give you as much as possible, saying you're our hero, our idol, and beyond that. Right, guys? We want to thank him for being here in Montreal today, right, guys? Exactly. And now, signing off, before we do this meet and greet, he's gonna meet all you guys. Is there a final message to the Montreal fans that's just stuck with you this whole ride?
We love you, Bret. We love you.
Thank you, Bret.
Thank you, Bret. Thank you, Bret. Thank you, Bret. Thank you, Bret. Thank you, Bret. Thank you, Bret.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for watching me for so many years. And I just want to say, I know that, I can only sort of like, when I think about when I punched Vince McMahon, like, I don't want to leave this room without sort of letting you experience the moment. I just want to describe it to you. Like, I did everything I could to be a professional that day, and I stood my ground on integrity, I was right, they were wrong. And, you know, and when they screwed me in the ring, like when I watched that Wrestling with Shadows back, I watched it on Friday before I left in Calgary. And I remember being in the ring, I did everything I could. I remember even when I walked out to the ring, it's like they're gonna try to screw me for sure. Like I know it's coming. I'm gonna do everything I put in my power to stop it from happening. I'm not gonna let them screw me, I'm not gonna let them pin me. The only way they got me was they got me through Earl Hebner, who I pulled the night before, and I said, Earl, if they try to screw me tomorrow, I want you to tell me. I said, will you tell me ahead of time? And he broke into tears and told me, I would never do it. I swear to God, I swear on my kids' heads that if they ever asked me to do that, I would never do it. And I remember telling them, I said, they're gonna ask you. I think you're gonna be the ref. So they're gonna ask you to screw me. So just want you to give me a heads up. Just give me a look or a wink at me or something. Clue me. Because he's all mic'd up and all that. And I suspected that. I really plotted out how they would try to do that to me. And I remember thinking, if they try to screw me, I'm gonna go down swinging. If Sean wants to go in and go for real out there, I'll just take him out and end the match. And I was pretty serious about my conviction about being right, and I was stuck in my position. I would never have changed anything I did. And when they did screw me, I remember I couldn't believe it. It was like 15 years I gave this guy everything. I'd never missed a show, I've never missed a town. I just thought I gave him so much that this is not any way to treat a guy like you would never do that to Wayne Gretzky, you know. But I just really felt betrayed, and I still remember all of that. And when I came to the dressing room and went back to the back, I went straight for Vince's room. And I remember hitting with the door with my shoulder, and I realized like steel doors bolted into the cement and stuff like that. I could hit that door for the next 10 years and never get in there. So I just stopped, and it's like everything just went right down. All the anger and everything just went right down to the bottom, and it's like I calmed right down. I was almost like joking around in the dressing room, and then I was showering. I'm still mad, but I'm just distracted myself. And I remember they came in, Rick Rude and Davey Boy came in the dressing room, and they're like, Vince is waiting for you. He wants to talk to you. And they were like so excited. They're like little kids. And I said, tell him to go. Just tell him to go. There's nothing that he can say to me to fix things. And the only thing that can happen is that he's going to get hurt. And somebody's going to, just tell him to go. There's nothing to. So they went and told him, and he said, no, I want to. And what was really happening, and if I can just project all this to you guys now, is that Vince knew that the only way for him to lose, he was going to lose a lot of face and respect to the wrestlers. The wrestlers were outside the dressing room smashing stuff, picking up those big giant barrels and throwing them places. Everything. There was like a mini riot in the back area of the dressing room. I remember wrestlers breaking stuff, and it was like real attention. Everyone hated Sean back then, and so there was a lot of dressing room tensions, and of course the show was over and people were going home. So Vince, when Undertaker went to his room and said, you got to come down and explain yourself to everybody, you've lost face with everybody. And so Vince immediately is like, how do I turn this into a positive? It's like, I know what I'll do. I'm gonna go and confront me and try to back me down. And he's gonna try to fight with me. He wants to fight with me because that's the only way he's gonna win favor with the dressing room because of what he did. Or at least that's the plan in his head. And I was like, when I came out of the shower, first of all, I was stark naked. I had no towel or anything. Davey Boy used to always steal my towel. He stole my towel that night, so I got no towel. So I come out completely soaking wet, naked, dripping wet. Vince is standing there, and I'm like thinking, if they ever do a movie, you don't want me being naked, standing on Vince, punching him out naked. It's not a good way to tell your story. And so I was like, so I had to walk past Vince, and it's just kind of funny because I really wasn't looking. I'm not a very confrontational kind of guy. Like, I'm not really like that. And I'm pretty passive most of the time. And I think that's what Vince was banking on. And so we had this little, conversation in front of everybody. And I remember I said something to him about, as soon as I get dressed, as soon as I get my clothes on and get dressed, if you're still here, I said, I'm gonna knock you out. I don't know why I said that, but I must have meant it, because, but Vince, he didn't budge. And I remember when I was tying my shoes, like, I didn't put a shirt on because I thought, like, the way the dressing room was, like, Vince would be where you guys are. And Sean was right here. Undertaker was right here. And then on my left would have been Owen, Davey, Jim Neidhart, Rick Rude, all to my left. And then there was a wall and another dressing room, and a bunch of wrestlers were behind there. But I just remember when I tied my shoelace, I tied my first shoelace, and I remember like putting my second shoe on, and I'm going, as soon as my lace is tied, it's game time. Like, if he's still here, I'm not gonna back down from him. So I remember I tied my shoelace and I stood up, very calm, like I stood up and I said, I guess I'm gonna have to deal with this. And I remember I picked my knee brace up, which is a big metal, like a bear trap. And I picked it up and I said, I started to walk to him with it. And then I stopped and said, I don't need this. And I threw it back on my bench. And we walked up and Vince came right towards me. Like, it was like, I knew that he wanted this, as we were walking towards each other, getting ready to tie up, like, don't like to have this fight. And I'm going, I can't believe I'm gonna fight Vince McMahon in the dressing room. But at the same time, I'm ready to rip his head off. And so I remember we kind of come forward and we almost like we tied up. Actually, we tied up like two pro wrestlers. I remember I had Vince's shoulder pad. We used to have those big padded shoulders. I had his shoulder pad with my left hand, which is why I know I didn't hit him with a left cross, which Undertaker is always saying, but that's not how it happened. Anyway, I grabbed him by the shoulder pad here, and in that moment, every wrestler is jumping to pull us apart. It's gonna be a pull apart. So it's gonna be a scuffle. And I realized in that moment that a scuffle is a victory for Vince. As soon as we touch each other, and then Vince and me are like, it's like we grab each other, nothing happens, and everybody jumps in and pulls us apart. That's the ending Vince pictured. And it's like a pull apart, and then you son of a bitch, and I'm yelling at him, and he's yelling at me, and everyone pulls us apart. To Vince, that's the beautiful ending. That's the perfect way for this story to end, because he stood up to one of his wrestlers and all this kind of crap. And I'm like, we tied up, and I remember thinking, if I throw a punch right now, someone's gonna grab my arm, and that'll be the end of it. And it'll be a big giant pull apart with a bunch of ripped shirts and stuff, but nobody's gonna make it. It'll be yelling at each other, and Vince going, I won. Like, this will give me the respect that I need in the dressing room. And so in that moment, as I walked to Vince, I'm like, as soon as we grabbed each other, I know that this is a trap. Like, this is a mistake. Like, something bad's gonna happen here. And Vince is laying a trap for me. And that would have been it. I was just about ready to throw an overhand punch, and they would have grabbed my arm, and that's exactly what would have happened. It would have been a pull apart, and we wouldn't even be sitting here today. But instead, I remember I was like, I'm gonna go with an uppercut. And my God, that was such a great punch. And I just want to project, like, Vince lay on the ground like a starfish. He was like down, out cold for maybe 5 minutes. And I remember I just sat down. Everybody just sat down, and everyone was at Vince's. Is like, first he's out cold, and they sat him up on his, and then they dragged him by his arms and armpits. They picked him up and brought him over to a chair and sat him on the bench. And he was like, trying to shake this. He was out cold. I broke my hand, and I knew it right then. And I remember sitting there, and I thought, Sean was like this. Sean was like this, and he was crying. And I remember like being like kind of where you are. And I just knocked out Vince, who was still out cold. And I remember looking over at Sean, and I remember his face, like he's bent over. I remember it was like, I should go for a 50-yard field goal right now. And I remember I walking over to him, and he was crying, and I think he knew, like he was scared shitless. Sean knew that he was in a room with a bunch of wolves, and he was the only lamb in there. And I remember walking over to him, and I remember thinking about it, and I said, I should just kick the shit out of him right now. I know he was in on it. He's the piece of shit. He was involved in this right from the start. And I knew it, and then I knew that the best thing to do, I just remember I walked up to him and I said, Sean, and I slapped him on the shoulder while he was, and I remember he barely tilted his head to look at me. I looked at him, I said, thanks for the match. And he burst into tears and started crying.
I love it.
And the last little high of the whole day, I'll just say this because it's important, is Jim Neidhart got fired a few years before because he threw a television monitor at one of the agents. He picked up actually a TV monitor in one of the back and threw it about 40 feet and just went right over the guy's head. And that was when he got fired. But I remember that day after all that happened, there's this quiet in the dressing room, and Jim Neidhart goes, so I guess they won't say anything to me anymore about the TV monitor. and everybody in the dressing room just burst out laughing. It was such a funny little moment where it was like this quiet tension. And I just shook Sean's hand and sat down, and it was like this tension, and it's like, and I just remember it just cracked everybody up. Undertaker, everybody just burst out laughing, and it was the funniest thing.
I love it. Guys, give it up again for Bret The Hitman Hart. Now, Bret, I got to thank you again. We did in Toronto, did in Montreal. We'll see what's next, but thank you so much on behalf of me for fulfilling a bucket list. And to these fans, guys, thank you so much for coming here today. And who's excited to meet Bret? Who's excited? Guys, one more time, give it up for Bret The Hitman Hart. Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure. We kill it. Thank you, guys. Bret.
I just want to say before I stop that how much I loved wrestling in Montreal. I always did. From the very first day I wrestled in Montreal, I knew that it was like a different kind of audience, that they loved their wrestling in a way that, similar to me. And so I just, right from the start, always had great memories in Montreal. Always was well received here. I never ever felt like a stranger in Montreal. And I just want to thank all of you for coming out today. I mean, it's been a long time, a lot of years since, 1997 was a long time ago, and a lot of things have happened since then. But all I can say is that in life, sometimes as long as you can look yourself in the mirror, that's all that matters.
Thank you. Guys, Bret Hart.
And this guy did a great job, didn't he, Johnny?
Yes, thank you. Love you, Bret. Love you, buddy.
Good question.
The one and only Bret The Hitman Hart. Come on.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're the GOAT.
There's no
greatest of all time.
I brought this for you. This is for you. This is grappa, nice and easy. Salud.
Hold on. The fourth person has to.
Here you go. We got a fourth one.
There. Salud. Better late than never.
Yep. Jesus.
Where's Jim Neidhart when you need him?
The cameraman.
brother. You were perfect. Thank you. Now, Bret the Hitman Hart, East Side, vintage shop, Pickering. Get your stuff, you know what I'm saying? The Hitman himself. Woo! Den.
Flair doesn't have one of these.
No, it doesn't. Flair don't have nothing.